Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you again for the latest episode of Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts. My guest tonight is my awesome panel. You've heard them before. You're going to hear from them again, and I think you'll really, really like the information just like you have in the past. We would like for you to please join us in aligning with the energies of co-creation so that this show gives you the best information to your highest good and best outcome. Welcome, panel people. I am so glad to have you back on the show.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, Chessie and everyone.
Well, I'm going to give a quick intro for everybody, just in case you're a new listener or you might have forgotten who our panel members are. We have Sherry Cortland, and through automatic writing, Sherry channels and shares information communicated by her guide groups. We also have Shelley Wilson. She's an intuitive medium, a Reiki master, and spiritual teacher who would love to assist you on your spiritual journey. Patricia Brooks is also with us. She's an interfaith, interspiritual minister and author of 2 books, Gods in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals, and Gods in the Little Things, Message from the Golden Angels. We also have Roberta Grimes. She's an attorney and afterlife expert, and she illuminates what for some can be a very difficult topic. Diane Collins is also with us. She's the author of the book, Do You Quantum Think? It's a system of thinking comprised of principles and practices that make it quick and easy for anyone to live in the wisdom of science and spirituality in everyday life. And then there's me, Chessie Roberts. I am a minister, a singer-songwriter, a spiritual teacher, mindset mentor, meditation coach, author, and radio host. I also lecture, and I am the founder and creator of Evolution of Self, Journey into Body, Mind, Spirit Balance program. And I'm just so happy to have you all back on the show. And for those of you who have not listened to the earlier panel shows, we have a bunch of questions sent in by you, our listeners, and we have 5 left over, so we're going to jump right in and answer some of these questions for you about awakening. We have 2 about sleep, so I'm going to break it down just so we don't confuse things, if that's okay with my lovely panel. Sometimes while sleeping, I think, I try hard to explain this, my soul tries to rise up and out of my body, but it stops just shy of leaving. What is going on with me? Why does that happen? And I'm going to ask Roberta if you could maybe start the answers off here.
Well, the evidence is pretty overwhelming that we all travel out of body just about every night. We consult with our guides. We may just stay in the room, but we're out of our body. We consult with our guides. We consult with our dead loved ones. We have a high old time. Now, if your body is not sufficiently asleep, this process could conceivably bring you back to wakefulness. And my hunch is this is a light sleeper who, as this natural process is happening and her eternal self is basically leaving the shell that is her body, that process wakes her up. For most of us, it doesn't wake us up, so I'm sorry that she has that difficulty.
All right. Sherry, what is your take on this?
Yeah, I agree. That sounds absolutely like what's happening. We all astral travel every night. That's my understanding. And we go on great and wonderful adventures. I'm wondering, though, is this happening to her when her soul is popping back into her body? Because that is what I hear a lot of, where people wake up when, maybe it's like I don't want to say hard landing, but the coming back in is where the waking up might happen. And does anybody have anything to add to that?
Well, let's move on to Shelley, and we'll come on down, and then we'll kind of talk about it a little bit, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
Shelley?
Sure. So what I was picking up as I was hearing that, and I really love what Roberta said and what Sherry said, and, it can, as we become more aware of our physical body, of our spiritual body, our energetic body, it can, at times seem that we're very light, that the veil is thin, but, she is definitely astral traveling. And as Sherry mentioned, about coming in a little hard, I've had that happen a few times where it's, came back in and it seemed like I was, dizzy, room was spinning, that kind of thing. So I've had that experience where I know I had to shut my eyes, go back, come back in again, and for people, when you explain this to them, they may think you're a total crazy, but once you've experienced it, you can relate and understand. But I don't think there's anything to fear per se. I think a lot of it is just getting used to leaving our body on a soul level.
All right, Patricia?
Yes, what I would say is I think that it's two things that is really important right here. The first is that I believe we're all different types of spiritual beings. So I think that we astral travel in different ways. And for me, I know that it is simply a shift in consciousness. So I don't know that I actually really go anywhere spiritually, physically in that sense, but my consciousness has shifted. So that might be why the travel seems, easier. But it's important, I believe, that whatever way that we experience spiritual travel in this way is to set our intention. I think it's really important that this person or anyone set their intention before they go to sleep if they do want to either remember or fully complete an astral travel. If they know that that's what they're doing, it ends up the intention for that to be so. And I think that will help make the experience a lot more gentle.
Okay. Diane?
I wanted to just add on to what Patricia was just saying, that because when you were talking about, you did say that this person wakes up, right? Or,
yes,
people were talking about the
just
jolt.
Shy
I think.
Of leaving.
Sorry, say that again?
Stops, just shy of leaving.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very interesting.
That's why I was thinking it was a hard landing coming back, and they just weren't realizing it.
You're right. They really started to enjoy that outer trip. But I think that part of the when you wake up, that out of the sleep, that there's a reason for it, and that it probably, especially as Patricia said, if you create a consciously generated intent before sleeping, to have an understanding of what is the message or what is it you're supposed to see. So when you wake up, you have the opportunity to reflect on that. That's happened to me many times, where you wake up at an odd hour and you can. It's not exactly like lucid dreaming where you don't wake up, but you're aware of what's going on. But when you do fully wake up that way, where you can distinguish for yourself, reflect on, what just happened and what is it I'm learning from this. And I think that's a very important part. There's no, as we all say, there are no, quote, accidents. So if you're waking up, there's something there for you.
Good advice.
I like everything everybody said, and I would add to that from my perspective, there's nothing wrong with you. The question asks, what's going on with me? Why does that happen? I think the reason that you're waking up and stopping the process is because you're afraid to leave your body. On some level, you know that that's what's going on, and it's a little frightening because it's that stepping out into the unknown, and I say that because I went through that myself. And what I did was right before going to sleep, just like Diane and some of the others have said, I set the intention that I would find out what I needed to know, but I also added one little thing that helped me feel safe, and that was a silver cord between my soul and my biology. And I made that firm in my mind that was there so I could always get back. And that took away that fear of leaving because I knew that my angels and guides and everybody were with me because I'd asked them to be. And then with this silver cord, I could always find my way back. And once I set that intention and started using that, I was able to go ahead and go out where I needed to go, find out what I needed to find out. And over the years, I have done this a lot. I don't need the silver cord anymore because I know that my guidance will always bring me back. But I think it's good to have a safety net. So that's my 2 cents worth. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to this?
just about the silver cord, because some of my metaphysical great mentors and teachers have said that there actually is a silver cord that connects us that way so that we stay grounded. And I think that can, just knowing that really it eliminates the fear completely, knowing that there is this silver cord that your astral body will always be able to come back.
Thank you, Diane. I think that's really important because these things happen like Roberta and Sherry and Shelley and Patricia were saying. This is a normal part of our sleep pattern. We do this whether we're aware of it or not. And as we become more aware of these things, they are a little frightening because we aren't experienced in them. So having this information, I think, can really help, and setting the intention for that can also be a good grounding thing. Is there any more conversation? Okay, we have another sleep question, and it is, sometimes, too, while sleeping, I feel myself wake up but still be sleeping. Then I'll see images in rapid succession flash across my mind as though I'm watching a movie. What is that? Does anyone know? Why don't we go backwards and start with Diane?
Well, that sounds like lucid dreaming, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, I'll tell you something. Years ago, many years ago, I had someone I was dating at the time, and he was an expert psychologist, and the expert was in lucid dreaming. And so he was teaching me to do it. And that sounds exactly what's going on. And the other thing that he recommended, and I was doing for a while, is that you keep a journal next to the bed and with you, and a pencil, of course, pen, and just jot down anything that seems important to you. But this is a very high experience. It's a high conscious practice, high level of awareness to be able to be in that state of sleeping and dreaming and remembering what these images are.
All right. Patricia, what is your take on this?
You know, that exact same thing happened to me, and I can't even believe that question has been asked because I have to say that my experience was not lucid dreaming. My experience, what happened was just that. I was asleep, and then I was awakened from my sleep, but I wasn't awake. And I had this, it was like a movie was playing, and I saw myself. I saw the top of my head kind of being cut and lifted back, kind of like a attached lid on a pot, lifted back, and I saw all of what looked almost like computer code just being downloaded into my head. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, I was being shown literally by chapter what my first book was to be on. I mean, and I woke up the next morning, and I sat in bed for 4 days and wrote. And I call it a spiritual download. It's nothing that profound or specific like that has happened since then, but it feels as if it happened last night. It's so clear and, to me still. So I think that it's a lot more than a dream state that we're in. I don't know exactly what it is. I just say I got a download, and it was incredible and profound, and I hope everybody has that opportunity because it was very cool.
But don't you think that a dream state is a download of sorts, or I think you said it well before about you're not actually going anyplace, but you're connecting in to whatever that dimension is and whatever that intelligence is.
Right. Diane, you're right. I mean, so it's a complete shift of consciousness, so I think that even underlines or underscores what a dramatic shift this is. So yes, when we enter the dream state, our consciousness is shifting to a degree, but whatever happened to me that night and whatever happened to this person that they asked the question, it is a much more dramatic shift in consciousness than I've ever experienced in a dream. It's probably the only way I can probably explain it. So, yes, it's all shifts in consciousness, but this is beyond the dream state that we regularly think of, at least in my experience.
Thank you both. Shelley, what's your take on this question?
Well, I definitely feel that both answers are very good answers. And, from my perception, my work as a psychic medium, this is Spirit's way of communicating with us. And many times the veil is very thin in those hours, 2, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and if we awake and we start seeing images or faces or symbols coming through, that to me is absolutely Spirit coming through and communicating with. And whether it's our loved ones on the other side or our guides, our angels coming through, they're going to use our frame of reference. And, Patricia said she felt like it was just last night. Well, it actually happened to me last night. I woke up at 11 o'clock and was awake, and then when I went to go back to sleep 4 hours later, I couldn't. I was just all of this energy coming in, this information, visions, everything like that. And so the thing is we can work with that energy, we can acknowledge it, we can feel inspired. As Patricia said, she wrote and wrote and wrote. Whether you call it a download, lucid dreaming, whatever, I say just work with it and go with see what feels right to you personally.
Excellent. Sherry.
Well, everything that I was going to say has already been said, and I'm right on target with Shelley, because my understanding is that this is truly where our loved ones who are on the other side, especially if somebody just recently passed, that is one way that they, come back to chat with us and let us know they're okay. Our guides will interact with us. There might be information that we need to get. And I think also that this goes into where we wake up and then we go back to sleep, and then we find ourselves in the same dream. I think there's definitely something important going on there. And as one of us said earlier, very high vibration, high energy, and also you got to write this stuff down, because when you are lucid dreaming, this is where you can interact within your dreams. There's something important going on here. So writing it all down, even though we might not understand what it's about right now, we will understand more down the road. So I would want to get every bit of that lucid dreaming down in my journal if it was happening to me.
Thank you. Roberta.
I would love to know what the content was of that dream or movie that she was seeing, because that would help us determine what.
Yeah.
I agree with what everyone is saying. I would just add, though, that it's probably more like a communication from a guide than anything else. This download of something you're supposed to do, I had a similar experience, but it was not nearly as traumatic when I wrote The Fun of Staying in Touch. But when I was a child, that's how my spirit guides communicated with me. They had something very dramatic happen, and that's the kind of thing that if we are prepared for it, our guides, it's a good way for our guides to give us information. If the content of that dream or vision or movie was itself meaningful to her, then that would certainly help me better understand, and all of us better understand what the source of it was. But I think it's a neat thing to have happen. And I think to the extent that someone is telling her something or him something, it's good to listen.
It's good that she knows enough, or he knows enough that it is important, and to pay attention and to have asked this question.
Oh, yes, I think so, too. I'd like to come back to this lucid dreaming after we've answered the next few questions, if you all are amenable to that, because I have a few questions about it myself. Does anybody have anything else right now for that before we go to the next question?
Well, I think what Diane here, that as I was listening to everyone, I was thinking, when you realize that when we're sleeping and, we're used to the idea, the concept of dreaming and the experience of dreaming. And so when we go out of body, or when we have this imagery, through the veil of whatever these other dimensions are and connections, whether it's to spirit guides or whatever, that it's kind of a training for us to be, because I think this happens, not I think, I know, in waking state. So it's kind of, I'm saying, kind of a training, because if we want to be living in a state of intuitive knowing, intuitive guidance, however you want to say that, connecting to the wisdom that is designed to come uniquely through you, connect to you, that it's kind of, it makes you more comfortable in your waking state and say, oh yeah, because when you get that spark of wisdom, it's like sometimes, you know how you just know things. You're awake. I'm not talking about sleeping, but I think the sleep part is where we get, you know, like it feels okay. Oh, okay, I was sleeping. Oh, I was just dreaming. But to know that this is happening while we are in a waking state as well is to deepen the experiential connection to infinite intelligence. Anyway, I never thought about it until now, but hearing all of you, it stimulated that for me.
Well, I think as we start to wake up, a lot of things change, don't you think?
Oh, my gosh, yes.
You know, as we're going through this process of awakening, which is what we're talking about here, and I probably should have said that at the top of the show.
Oh, you mean like wake up, like your soul waking up?
As a spiritual awakening.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything takes on a different perspective. We start paying attention to these things, like these wonderful questions that we've gotten from the listeners about what's going on in their lives and how to handle it. They have become aware, consciously aware that these things are changing, and this individual has realized that this is something special. So like somebody, all of us, I think, have said that now it's a question, what is going on? Why is this happening? And I think it's all due to this awakening process that we're all going through.
Very good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great insight.
Are we ready for our next question?
Yeah.
All right. Have you ever, in a complete random instance, seen an animal that shouldn't be where it is? Where it is. What does that mean? For example, I don't live near the ocean. I'm hours away, but the other day while at Home Depot, I saw a seagull in the parking lot. And I think we've got several people who can really answer this one. And I'm going to start with Roberta, if that's okay with you all.
Yeah.
Well,
Roberta,
this is one of the most common ways that the dead communicate with us. They do it with very small animals too, and they do it with butterflies and dragonflies, but they do it a lot with birds. Birds appear out of season, out of range, in a place they shouldn't be. They are basically, what happens is our dead loved ones have very much more powerful minds than we do. And after their deaths, one of the things that they learn to do is to influence the minds of small creatures. And they will literally take some unsuspecting seagull, take over his mind, and fly him to that parking lot just so that you'll see him. And that's. I mean, I've seen reports of cranes, Florida cranes in the north in the winter, because someone from Florida was being buried there. Seagulls. All kinds of birds, just out of range, out of time, out of place, and not afraid of us very often. Those are signs from our dead loved ones that they're survived and they're fine. All right, Sherry?
Yeah, what you just said makes so much sense to me. Animals as totems and animal guides. I mean, people have been exploring this for years and years and years, and just a slightly different take on what was just said. Sometimes when we see an animal, and I'm not talking right now about an animal that's in a completely different place than it should be, that I definitely believe was put there on purpose, but sometimes when we see an animal, or we continue to see the same animal over and over again, there's probably some kind of a message there, you know? And if it's dolphins, it's probably a message about communication. You know, different animals have different characteristics, and there are things that we can learn from the different characteristics of each particular animal. So if we're seeing the same thing over and over again, there's probably a message there for us from our guides. Something about a characteristic of this particular animal is something that we need to pay attention to. As far as seagulls are concerned, seagulls, I did just a little quick lookup of this, and seagulls seem to represent freedom also communication and resourcefulness, because they are very good at finding food after all. So there might be something there for the person who wrote in this question. But seagulls are also very chatty, and freedom is the thing that keeps coming up over and over and over again for me with seagulls. I'm waiting to hear what Gang has to say here. But to see that is definitely, there's something there. There's no doubt that there is a message there. As to what that message is, my advice would be to sit down and meditate on it and just ask the universe, hey, I saw this seagull where it wasn't supposed to be. What does this mean to me? And then try to hone in on the answer there.
Absolutely. All right, Shelley, what do you think about the animals?
Yeah, well, the first thing when you were reading the story before you said it was a seagull, I just have to acknowledge that I was thinking, okay, did they see a shark somewhere? Did they see a whale? What kind of water life? But to me, I'm in Oklahoma, and first and foremost, there are ponds and there's lakes around here, and we actually have a lot of seagulls in the pastures looking for grain. So sometimes to me, a messenger is simply just an animal having their animal experience. I almost said human life experience. But I really agree, with what Roberta was saying, because our loved ones, our guides, do provide us messengers through the use of animals, birds, insects, whether they come into our awareness actually or within our mind or whatever. And Sherry had gave a version. I had already picked up my Ted Andrews Animal Speak Pocket Guide, and the message that Seagull is offering says, adjust your behavior and how you communicate. Do not force or argue your way into anything new for success. So to me, that could very well be a reminder, just chill, just hang out, don't get so involved, and be conscious of where you invest your energy. But once we start accessing this information, especially if you Google it or look at this book, Spirit's going to keep giving us those animal messengers because they know we're paying attention.
Oh, very true, Shelley. That's very true.
Yes, that is. I have them come visit me a lot. Patricia?
Well, I agree with everyone, and I have to say that my first book, the one that I just spoke about, that I received the download or the communication from my guides when I was in a sleep state, was exactly this topic on animal totems. So my first book, God is in the Little Things, Messages from the Animals, is my true story of all these communications and very unique physical visits from animals acting as totems. And what I believe to be true is that the animals are whether it is, a loved one that has passed, or whether it's our guides, or whether it's the divine in whatever form that we think of it, trying to communicate with us, that they are, and whether the animal has a consciousness about it or not. I'm not sure about that, but it's definitely, I would say, a form of divine communication. And the other panel members had mentioned Animal Speak as, that's kind of like the Bible about, animal totems, but there's so much information on the Internet and so many other books today. So what I think I would want listeners to know is that if an animal, visits you uniquely or repetitively, whether it's in the physical state, the dream state, a meditative state, to pay attention, because it means that that's one of the ways that the divine feels that you're open to receiving a message and they're trying to communicate.
Thank you, Patricia. I've been led to tell the listeners that seagull any water bird actually is rather unique because they live in 4 of the 5 elements. They live in the earth, the air, and the water. And for some reason, that's important, and I had to say it, so thank you, guys. I've said it. Now, Diane, what is your experience with this?
Well, this is really helping me, this conversation. I'll tell you what. Several years back, I went by myself, not with my husband, to a conference at the Edgar Cayce Institute in Virginia Beach, and it was called Physics of Consciousness. And
Diane, can you get a little closer to your microphone, please?
Anyway, it was a conference called, can you hear me better now?
Yes, thank you.
The Physics of Consciousness, and some of my favorite people in consciousness were there, Dr. Larry Dossey and Peter Russell, the great cosmologist, and my dear friend and mentor, Fred Ellen Wolf, who wrote the foreword to Do You Quantum Thing. And so I was really excited to be there. But what happened is, I went back to my hotel, I forgot, on the ocean. It's very quiet in Virginia Beach. And I looked out the window. It was evening. And there was, I would say, a flock, maybe a big flock of seagulls. And I don't know whether seagulls actually, I live on the beach, so I'm seeing with seagulls all the time, but seemed like they were floating, like about 100 of them, like this enormous, I'm not exaggerating, an enormous amount of these birds on the ocean right in front of my window. Now, were the people in the rest of the hotel looking out and noticing this? I don't know. But that had such a huge experiential, spiritual impression on me. And I never really knew what it meant, but I knew it meant something. So I'm thanking you all because it's coming to me now. A lot of what it probably meant is that I was at this conference and maybe it was just saying, go with the flow, go with the float, and just, not be there like a know-it-all, like I know about consciousness or something, and just be there and with listening, as I say, one of the quantum thing practices, listening from not knowing. But there was a knowing of that without being able to articulate it at the time. But that was a very, very unusual happening for me with the seagulls.
Well, thank you, Diane. That was wonderful. Oh, I want to add, too, that a lot of times we have these wonderful experiences, these things that hit us just kind of out of the blue, and something in the back of my mind says, wow, that's incredibly important to me. And then in the foreground of your mind, that makes no sense at all. I don't understand. And I would caution you to pay attention to the importance of it, but not dwell on it. Just kind of let go of it like Diane did. And what will happen is the meaning, the message, the importance will come to you at a later time, maybe when it's more, you're more conducive to picking up on that. All right, so does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Okay, then our next question. I have read/heard that it is really important to invest time to search for past lives. Should I do that, or is it more important to work on this life I'm currently living and live it in each moment? And Diane, what do you think about that?
Well, I think definitely that it is more important to be attentive to this life, but it's a both-and answer. I think we can get kind of lost in, what was my past life and what was I doing? And I've been with I've had some experiences around this, actually experiencing my past lives, many of them, and in conjunction with another person. And I've also had these, psychic astrologer mentor of mine teach me a lot about it. And, one of the things she said that I think all of you say, being tuned in that way, is that as she said to me, there's not that much difference between this life and the next life. So she's looking at the astrology chart, and it's a soul, S-O-U-L, blueprint. So that, and then it's a question of free will, what you choose to live out and manifest. These are the things you're given, like a blueprint of, any building, whatever you're constructing your life. So I think that the important thing is if you connect to some of these past life experiences, that they can be very significant, such as in Brian Weiss's experience with his patient who he regressed in therapy to get to in the book made Many Lives, Many Masters. So where she had this severe phobia and was able to see that it didn't come from this life, this particular incarnation, but from something else, and that was able to free her. So there are certain instances where it becomes very helpful. Or, I had a case where there was something that was always around a topic that was always upsetting to my soul, and a reader told me why. And that it had come from a past life. But it's just to get additional information, and when you start to really live and see the world, relate to the world in the largest perspective, you realize it's all interconnected, and that whatever you're doing in this life, to be the most attentive to and to use to your benefit of whatever information comes to you through the veil of, and it's really not even past lives, it's just other dimensional lives. I think of it as more parallel, or as I was listening to a channel last night, very interesting channel, where they were talking about that there's really no past, present, and future. We as human beings, put that on to realities to give us, access to make it convenient. But it really, in reality, that temporal zone doesn't exist in the larger dimension. And so when you're looking at things that way, you realize it's just a matter of what you're connecting into and where we're incarnating. So you can always connect. And I think probably Roberta has a lot to say about this too, but you can always connect, that's why, to other spirits, to your own spirit, as you took a body in another lifetime. So your soul's going through all these incarnations. But to answer the question, it's a both and, but definitely let's work on this lifetime, because this is where we came to evolve ourselves.
Thank you, Diane. Patricia?
Again, I agree with Diane. So I think we're very much in sync with this call, Diane. And but I'd like to say that I've also done a number of past life regressions and seeking for answers for pain or trauma or something that I've experienced in this life, and trying to heal. And what I've realized is that they're one tool, but really what they've done, because I do agree you can chase past lives forever. What I believe is most important, what it brought to me was a real understanding of my spiritual truth, a consciousness of my own spiritual being, and knowing that it always comes back to self, whether it's self-love or self-forgiveness. And people can actually really just kind of cut through the chase and just kind of connect with their own self and know that they can release the energies, they can release the traumas, they can release the pain simply by truly knowing the essence of their spiritual being. So that's a little bit different than I've said in the past, because I know on this show I've said that it's important to kind of walk through the pain sometimes and heal it. And I remember Diane very specifically saying, no, you can just kind of bypass it. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And so much has happened since one of our very first panels. And I have to say that not only has that helped me, but it's allowed me to help others understand that, yes, things like past life regressions are helpful. They can be one way for healing, but the more important thing that they bring you to is the understanding of your spiritual truth, and the healing really happens there.
Thank you, Patricia. Shelley?
Yes, I was listening to what both of these amazing women were saying, and, the immediately thing that I pick up and that what I tell my clients is, we are having this human life experience now for a reason. So if we can focus our energy in the here and now rather than the past, and that even includes past lives, and focus on the now, that's going to help us to create our future. With that being said, though, there are many times things that may come up, whether they're triggers or patterns, that are a repeat, whether it's from this lifetime, same type of individual, same type of experience, and Sherry can talk about that with the windows of opportunity and the relationship villains. But the thing is I do believe that there can be past life scenarios that can affect us in this time. And when that happens, just spend some quiet time in reflection. Allow yourself to ask the questions, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? Is this tied to a past life? Whatever question that comes into your awareness, and then listen, feel what comes through for you, and that's going to help you to move through that energy so that you can heal from it, so that you can move on rather than stay in that energy.
Thank you, Shelley. I completely agree with that and everything else that's been said. Sherry, what can you add to this? I know you have good information.
Well, I think everybody covered so many wonderful things about this. This particular question is such a great question, and I feel like we could probably all do a 2-hour show on this, just this question alone. I love this question. The short answer to it for me is yes, it can be important to learn about some of our past lives, but we can't get all caught up in them and forget about what we're here to accomplish during this lifetime. And, here's the thing about past lives and why we don't come into this world awake to all of our past experiences. It's because we need to focus on the here and now. And the reason for that, like Shelley was saying, is it's all about windows. We have to make the best decisions and choices that we can possibly make for ourselves so that we can grow and progress in this lifetime. And if we're not living in the moment, if we're dwelling on past lives, then we might miss something that's very, very important that will help us move forward. And, if we remembered all of our past lives, and a lot of us have had violent past lives, difficult ones, tragic ones, sad ones, it's possible that we might start spending more of our precious time here on earth dwelling on those past lives instead of living in the present and making the best choices for ourselves that we possibly can to move ourselves forward for this incarnation. And my guide group, very, very clear on this point. Living in the moment and being aware of the repercussions of our thoughts, our words, our actions, what these things have on, what effect they have on those around us, that's what propels us forward spiritually, and that's what allows us to raise our vibratory levels. But it's all about balance, I think. Balance is very important when it comes to learning about past lives. We don't want to cut ourselves off from windows of opportunity for growth. We want to make sure that we're meeting our current goals, and we want to make sure that we don't start to just get all crazy about the fact that we found out that we were once Cleopatra and dwell on that over and over again instead of reveling in that, instead of taking action to move ourselves forward now. So knowing about past lives, absolutely. We want to find out about the ones that directly influence our current life, though. And I know that somebody brought this up because if we have an innate fear of something, it's probably connected to a past life, and tracking down the source of that fear to where it originated, where it all got started, that's going to help us put that residual energy back into the Akashic records where it belongs. And that way we can release, we can dissipate any residual fear we have. And so really I think it just comes all the way back to the short answer that I gave in the beginning. Sometimes it is good to know, but we just have to use the information to move ourselves forward and maybe not so much for entertainment purposes.
That was a good way of saying it.
Like that, yeah. Roberta?
I think that one of the takeaways from this conversation, in fact, this series of conversations, is that all of us come from very different perspectives. We all come to the same set of conclusions. And I think anyone listening has to be astonished by that. But I agree with what everyone is saying. I would just add a couple of things. I think elaborating, especially on a couple of things that Diane said. First, there is no objective time. All of our lives are happening at the same time. Upper-level beings tell us that pretty definitively. They say we should think of our lifetimes, if we're going to think about them at all, more as a bucket from which each lifetime is poured back into, is pulled and back into which it's poured, so that we're not thinking of living in a series of bodies. That's really not how it works. In fact, all our lives, including future lives, are happening, and Brian Weiss actually proved this by learning that when he tried to regress people to a past life where they had developed a fear of water or whatever and couldn't find a cause there, he went to a future life, and that future life was causing them in this present life to be afraid of water. So if your eyes don't cross over that, I don't know what would make them cross. But that being the case, I think that past life regression and progression are useful techniques therapeutically if you have a phobia or an illness that doesn't seem to have a cause or something affecting you in this lifetime. I can testify I was cured of a fear of heights in an instant by discovering that I had been a fool when I was 18 in the year, early 1800s. It works beautifully for that. I think that to use it recreationally, what a beautiful term, distracts you from what's important about your life now and your life then. Then you are working on lessons too. It doesn't matter what your name was or what the circumstances were. And having had some regressions, I'll tell you, it doesn't necessarily make you feel good, even if you find out you were someone who was significant or important. I recently had an experience where I was regressed, and I'm troubled by it to this day. Not because anything bad happened, but because I thought I was me, but I'm also that guy. It's a strange thing. So I would say that people shouldn't use it except therapeutically. It's not important. Once we die, we all have the opportunity to research all our past lives and do the whole life review of that past life and get back familiar into it. Now is the time to be just doing the best we can with today. I think that's frankly all that that's plenty to have on anybody's plate.
Thank you, Roberta. I agree with that. I, too, had this particular question come up in my travels and journeys and learnings and studyings, and I went to my guidance and said, hey, guys, what is this all about? And they suggested that it's another tool for us to use, pretty much like what Roberta I lost my place here. What Roberta and Sherry were saying, it's good for therapeutic reasons, because the reason I was doing it was because I had something in my life just made absolutely no sense. I could not figure for the life of me what was causing this particular dichotomy in my energy field. And by going through the regression, I found what started it, where it came from, and I was able to say, oh, I get that. I'm not that person anymore. I understand, and now this is not an issue for me. So used as a tool, I think it's very, very powerful and helpful. But like it has been pointed out, recreational use is probably not a good idea.
Right.
Anyone else have anything else?
And Chessie, this is Patricia. If I could just say something, I just feel really compelled.
Yes, please.
To share. Yeah, I think, again, I agree with everybody. However, I think it's important also, and just to reiterate, it's been touched on, that therapeutically, or to understand or heal, or, physical and or emotional, mental, spiritual ills that we want to heal, I agree that it can be very helpful. But there are some real concerns or risks also, because when I regressed one time, I saw a life that I acted very badly. I actually was an abusive husband, and intellectually, I got, okay, that's a past life, and I knew that my soul didn't do it, that was the ego representation of the physical body, but it then propelled me towards other ways to needing to heal from understanding who I was in the past life, because it really stayed with me, and I had to then do a lot of further healing to really come to terms with that. So that it definitely isn't anything like everyone has been saying to do recreationally, but even therapeutically, there some very profound things can come up. People can remember things that may not even just make them feel a little weird, can be very significantly traumatic in this life for them then. So I would just say that if people were to want to explore that they regress with somebody that they trusted, that they know that, was somebody that they felt safe with, and that then they were also in another position that then if further exploration or healing or work needed to be done, that, that they were able to do that too.
Great points. Thank you so much for bringing that out. Another thing I would say as you go into this, because of what was just talked about, you also have it in the back of your mind and in your attentions and in your heart and soul and whatever else you carry around with you, that forgiveness may be required, and it may not be required of another person. It may be required for yourself. I ran into that when I was doing some karma clearing several years ago. And I had to go back and forgive myself for all of these things that I had done that, like you said, made me very uncomfortable to know that I had done them. But we are people. We're here to learn, and this is how we do it. This is a process. This is just a very small part of the process. So thank you for all of your insights. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add?
I just wanted to add that I think this is where it becomes very important. You know, we're all talking about evolving consciousness, elevating consciousness, going to, you know, more rarefied realms, frequencies. For example, this intuitive faculty of mind, because if you are when you are tuned in, you will know when to seek out interest or information that you need, knowledge that you need from a past life or not. And you can just follow your intuition on it. One other thing that was funny is that my mentor, Iris, who reads past lives as a psychic astrologer, she used to say, how come everybody was always a king or a queen? How come nobody was ever a poor, starving child? You know, and I thought,
that was my regression. I'd been sold into slavery by my parents so they could feed the rest of the kids. And I came over on a boat. So I've never been a king or a queen that I'm aware of.
Okay, good. We took it seriously.
I was burned out to
It's funny the way she says it, right? Oh, I was this, I was that. I was the queen of the Isle.
You know what, and one more thing, this is Patricia again, just to say, the other thing that I think is really important too is that as spiritual beings that we do the work, we do the regression, as much as we can, a lot of people, and I'm not talking about anybody's qualifications or gifts, but I think, again, it's very important that you work with somebody that you truly trust, because a lot of people can tell you they will read you and tell you your past lives. That always has never really sat really well with me, because I don't know. I just think it's important that we do the work. I think that it's for as much as you can, if you're that interested in it, then do the regression yourself, because you will gain, you know, so much more from even just having that experience, you know, insights that might be so meaningful to you that somebody else wouldn't even be able to tell you, regardless if they saw it or not. So for my 2 cents is, if you can do the regression, do it. Don't have somebody tell you who you were in a past life.
Right. Ask your guidance. And I'm big with this. I don't do anything without asking guidance beforehand. Used to I did, but since I've connected with them and they really give me good information, I always ask them. I don't care what the situation is. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Is this good for me? And the other thing is to ask them to tell me what it is I need to know.
Oh, that's a good thing.
I agree with that. Chessie, I agree with that. I think that's really helpful.
I don't go in with a preconceived notion of what I'm going to see. I just let them drive the bus and say, okay, you know, I'm in your hands. This is what you do. I trust you to do this. And I trust them more, and I trust myself even sometimes. And that's funny because it's all the same thing. So
I'm glad you said that.
Okay. All right. Here is our last question, ladies. Because I do not feel that I have a spiritual teacher or guide other than that which is inside me, what a good point here. Mm-hmm. That intuition as whether something is right or wrong, I feel is my best teacher and guide. How can I be guided by others as they are basing their guidance on their own personal ideas and beliefs? How do I make sense of this? Wow, what a pointed thing for our last question, huh?
Can you read that again, Chessie?
Yes, I can. The verbiage is a little convoluted, so I'm reading just precisely what's on the page in front of me. Mm-hmm. Because I do not feel that I have a spiritual teacher other than what is inside me, that intuition as to whether something is right or wrong, I feel is my best teacher and guide. How can I/we be guided by others as they're basing their guidance on their own personal ideas and beliefs? How do I make sense of this? Let's start with Roberta this time.
I think it's important to understand, as all of us know, that we are one being, and our guides work in teams. I just coincidentally had a reading in which I ended up doing a lot of talking with my guides, not my mother, who is a person who wanted to talk. But it's clear to me from what they've said that the other people who are working in the area of afterlife research and with whom I kind of feel simpatico, our guides are all working together. I mean, we have like a joint team. So it's impossible. Everybody has guides. So if they're talking about their internal guidance, they're not talking about their intuition. They're talking about the beings who have chosen not to be in bodies right now so they can help them. And B, when people are doing important work, they get experts in that field. Often those experts are working with others in the field as well and trying to coordinate all of us. So it's just impossible. No man is an island. It's impossible for someone to go through, I know best, I know everything, because if you do, you're going to make really terrible rookie mistakes. I think it's essential to listen, and it's very essential to understand that you have guides who are also guiding other people, who are to give you information through those other people because you're not listening to them. I mean, it's all one. We are all one. And that's sort of the short answer. That it's just amazing to me that someone would even ask that question.
Well, I think part of that is that we have been brought up to see everything as separate. We're still under that separation illusion. So their question makes sense to me, but your answer also makes sense to me. Sherry, what have you got on this particular?
Well, I'll tell you this, guys. I have spent years and years doing workshop after workshop and talk after talk, trying to get folks to understand that listening to their gut is the thing that's going to help them make the best choices when confronted with a scenario or a situation. So the fact that this person is listening to their gut, did I have that correctly? She's listening to her gut?
Yes.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I think that this is right on track, and I'm not sure why she wants to get off the track. That is, to make the best choices is to listen to the gut, because that's our guidance system. That's our internal GPS. That's our higher self. That's our guides trying to give us the best wisdom, that, help to point us in the right direction. She's right on target. I don't know why anybody who is there wants to get input from any place else. That's the place to be. Listening to your gut and making decisions based on your gut, to me, is very high vibration.
There you go. Don't live your life by committee. Live by your gut and by your guidance, and that's the way to do it.
But the problem is the guidance that person is getting may not be truly a lot of people are not listening to their spirit guides, their higher selves, their higher guidance, but they're listening to baser things. I mean, I've known of people who had guides who were trying to get through them. I know of someone now, and the guide, that person's guide is going through a lot of other people to get to this woman because she refuses to give up her grief, which is just holding her back. So I agree with you that what we think of as our gut is very often our guides, but it isn't always. Sometimes it's baser things.
Well, she could be listening to her ego, but I mean, that I have no way of knowing. I'm just going by the fact that she says she's listening to her gut. But, I mean, you're bringing up a very good point that she could be listening to her ego, and she has to learn to differentiate that.
Okay. Shelley, what do you think of this particular process?
Well, the first thing that I was picking up is, I was paying attention to how you read the question. And the thing is I feel like she was posing it philosophically. How could anyone not listen to their gut? And, because when people are giving guidance, it is from their own intuition. And so what I feel, rather than, this is her questioning her own intuition, I feel like she's very much in tune. And this is her way of saying, I feel like everyone should tune in for themselves as well. As a psychic medium, and especially a psychic that doesn't even care to use the word psychic, I am all about empowering people and honoring people's free will, reminding them that they are creating their reality with the choices they make and the energy they're putting out. And so it is nice if you would like validation from someone of what you already know. And what I believe a true good reader, and this is more talking psychic versus mediumship, but a good reader is going to tell you what you already know. And I do feel that it's important not to, hinge your decisions or put all of your energy in what they say. Rather, take control of yourself, and this is what comes into trusting that intuition, that gut instinct, listening, paying attention. Do you get tingles, chills, buzzing, vibrations, whatever it may be on your physical body? Because to me, that's our spirit, our soul, our heart, consciousness of, yes, we are all connected, but it's that way of giving us those messages to our intellect, our human mind. So the more that we get out of our head and into our heart and listen to what our soul and our spirit says, which is our heart, it will help us.
Thank you, Shelley. We're going to go ahead and go over the hour this time because I think this is such an important question, and I want to hear from Patricia and Diane. So, Patricia, what do you think about this?
I think it's another amazing question, and I just want to answer it, just from a little bit different point, because I think that part was covered. I did a radio show titled, Stop Chasing the Guru. Not everyone is your teacher, not everyone is your healer. And so another perspective on this is are people listening, only to themselves, or is there information out there, other teachers, out there? I mean, I'm a lifelong student. That means I'm no longer going to be signing up for everybody's seminar and believing everybody else has my answer. However, I think it's important from a spiritual perspective, if you are a spiritual seeker, to using discernment, that there is much wisdom out there. And there's a lot of people, such as the people on this panel, that do have wisdom to share. So you discern who you listen to, and then you use resonance on what you then follow. And I think that that's very important. So I don't think that every answer can come from just ourselves, because I believe that there's learning to do or experiencing to do. But as the other panelists have said, that it's very important to use resonance and then know what feels right to you to follow.
Thank you, ma'am. I think discernment is a very crucial word here, and I know Diane knows a little bit about that, don't you?
Well,
Guess what chapter
it's
I'm
so funny
reading?
you said that, because the whole time everyone was saying, I was thinking, and it's perfect, right, Patricia? I don't know. You and I are like vibrating right in tune there.
We have totally just
start out by
into one, Diane.
All right. I was going to start out by saying the key word is discernment. But let me say it a different way. And, of course, it is discernment, because let me say it this way. One of my other great teachers, Swami Muktananda, who says, this world is a palace of mirrors. And, when you look at it this way, everything is reflecting. We're all reflecting back to ourselves. So if you're really living in the embodied truth of these platitudes that I say, we all say, we are one and everything is connected and it's one being and there is no separation. There are distinctions, no actual separation. And so that's where the discernment comes in, because as Patricia was starting to say, when it's like you can be receiving, we don't end at the end. This really returns us full circle, right, back to the sleep questions, because we don't end at the edge of our skin or our body. And so we are in this field, this unified field of infinite intelligence, of consciousness, of energy in flux, informed by intelligence, that it's all of the above, this multidimensional, intelligent field that we are continuously online with, like being online with the Internet. And then, well, what are we going to click into? So I think when something comes across our path, and by the way, I think that question is a very well-stated, thoughtful question from your listener, Chessie. To be able to see, well, wait a minute, I am in tune with my intuition, with my intuitive knowing. And at the same time, other people, what do I do with, that was really the question, well, what do I do with other people if they're coming from their intuitive knowing? And I think, a few of us, I'm saying us, I didn't say it yet, but other people have on the panel, where you're right, we're learning from each other. We're reflecting one another. But the world is a palace of mirrors, meaning that we're reflecting ourselves all the time. And so when something comes in, this is where the mastery lies, in the discernment, to say, is this a message that I'm supposed to be listening to and paying attention to and acting upon, or is this a message that I'm hearing just to tweak, just to give me a little twitch, a little twitter here, and say, no, that doesn't feel quite right. No, yeah, that's interesting, and let me take, a principle from what this person is advising, but not take the whole thing. So I think this is what, at least, I'm committed to, and I'm committed to for all of us in this world, is actually being the master beings. And being the master beings, or as I like to distinguish mastery, is knowing what to do in the moment that it needs to be done, and doing it without having to think about it. It doesn't mean that we're not thinking, but it's because we're so in tune with our multidimensionality of our being, of this infinite knowing, that we just know the right thing to do. And for that is why we do all the other practices, including conscious conversations such as this one, exchanges, and reflection to each other. This is why we do meditation practices. This is why we do chakra clearing or whatever else practice, why we get readings, why we tune in to, in a mediumistic way. All of the things we do, in my view, is so that we can be in the fullest experience of our own selves as the masters ourselves. I think that's what the message of the time is.
Well, thank you, Diane. We're going to have to wrap the show up. We've gone over the hour, but I think that's just fine because I think what we had to talk about was extremely important. Do any of you all have anything you'd like to add to any of our conversations so the listeners can have something to chew on, as if we haven't given them enough already? Okay. Well, I want to, nobody hang up. I want to talk to you after the show, but I want to thank all of the listeners and the panel for joining me today on this show. This is the last of our panel shows for a while, at least on this subject. If I know us, we'll think of something else to talk about. But I really appreciate all the help that I got, all the questions from the listeners, all the answers from these awesome ladies. And if you have a thing, a question, or a suggestion, or a topic that you'd like covered on the show, please send me your question, your suggestion, or your topic, and you can email that to me at Chessie@ChessieRoberts.com. You can find all of my information at ChessieRoberts.com. My music is on ArchersMeadow.com, and my book is on Amazon.com. And when I get the show up and running, you will have everyone's contact information so that you can go back and contact any of the people on the panel with any question that you might have. So thank you for listening, and come back anytime to hear Get on the Grid with Chessie Roberts. Have a great week. Bright blessings. Bye-bye.